ERP lawsuits are chock full of lessons and tips and things that we can take away to make our implementations more successful. But what are the biggest lessons that I've learned from having witnessed many lawsuits in the past? That's what I'm going to talk about here today. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world reach their third stage of digital transformation success. And here at Third Stage Consulting, where I work, one of the service offerings we provide our clients is expert witness testimony services. So in other words, lawyers will hire us to write reports, to testify in court and get deposed and provide expertise around why a lawsuit happened and why a project failed. So what my team and I do during these sorts of engagements is that we will analyze in sort of a forensic way an entire project to figure out what exactly happened along the way and how the project failed. It means that we go through all the emails that were exchanged on the project, we look at all the status reports, the steering committee updates, the contracts with the original software vendor and the system implementer. We look at all the artifacts and deliverables that are created throughout a project. And in short, what we do is we recreate the timeline and recreate the story of what happened so that we can explain how the project failed. And then the attorneys fight over whose fault it was, and they sue each other for a lot of money. So what I want to do today is talk about what are the 5 main things that I've learned from lawsuits, having been an expert witness for over 50 different ERP lawsuits over the years. There's 5 common themes that I see in each of these lawsuits. So my goal here today is not to suggest that you might get sued someday and this is what to expect, but instead what I want to do is share some of the patterns that we see in failures so that you can avoid some of those same challenges as you go through your ERP implementation. So if you do find yourself in a lawsuit, we can certainly provide expert witness testimony, but more importantly, if you're looking to avoid some of these challenges, it's something that my team and I can help with as well in making sure that you mitigate some of the risks along the way. Before we dive too far into today's content, I want to invite you to learn a little bit more about Third Stage Consulting, who we are and what we do. I've included a link to a video right here that describes Third Stage in a bit more detail. It talks about our story, our history, our philosophy, our clients, our service offerings, and that sort of thing. But in general, what Third Stage Consulting does is we're an independent and tech-agnostic consulting provider. We help clients through their entire digital transformation life cycles, beginning with digital strategy, software evaluation and selection, all the way through and including implementation planning, implementation readiness, and the actual implementation itself. We're technology agnostic, so we only represent our clients' best interests. We do not represent software vendors. But having said that, we work very closely with software vendors, all the leading players that you can imagine we've worked with, both in helping clients evaluate and select them, but also in helping clients implement those solutions as well. So we have a very broad, objective, agnostic view of the market that is meant to really represent your interest as you go through your digital transformation. I also encourage you to scan this QR code right here to get access to our resource center. This resource center has a ton of information, a ton of ebooks that are free. You have access to top 10 software rankings, playbooks for how to make your project more successful, guides to change management, YouTube videos, all kinds of stuff that are going to help you through your digital transformation. So I encourage you to scan this QR code to get access to those resources. And please feel free to reach out to me directly to brainstorm ideas about your project. Even if it's just informally, you want to bounce around some ideas and get some informal advice, I'd be happy to spend some time with you. So feel free to reach out to me. I've included my contact information below. You can also find it in the description field of this video as well. One of the most common patterns we see in ERP software lawsuits is the fact that multiple parties involved in the project had unrealistic expectations from the start. In other words, they started the project down a path that was unrealistic. Either it was an unrealistic timeline, an unrealistic estimate of what the cost was going to be, unrealistic estimate of what the resource commitment would be, unrealistic view of what the software can and can't do. Unrealistic expectations of some sort can doom a project from the start, because what ends up happening is when you draw a line in the sand and put a stake in the ground and say, this is what our project's going to look like, this is how much we're going to spend, this is how much time it's going to take, this is what we're going to get out of the project. When you draw that line in the sand, you build an entire plan and strategy around those assumptions. And when those assumptions are wrong, it means that you're completely flying blind in terms of how you implement. So for example, a lot of times what happens is software vendors and implementation technical partners will come to an organization, to a CIO or whoever it is, and say, we have a proposal for you of how we can deploy your software in, let's just say, 12 months. We can deploy our software to your organization in 12 months, You'll be fully functional. This is all the stuff our software can do. This is the value you'll get out of it, et cetera, et cetera. That's their job, is to sell you. But along the way, what's happening is they're selling you an unrealistic vision in many cases, because oftentimes, while it may be true that 12 months is a realistic timeline for some organizations, it may be that it is not realistic for your organization. It might be that 18 months was the number it was always going to be, but the fact that they sold you on a vision of 12 months means that now you've built a plan that was unrealistic to begin with, and you're operating with a house of cards, for lack of a better word. So having realistic expectations up front is really important, and one of the best ways you can cut through the noise and cut through the fiction of proposals and the sales process that create these unrealistic expectations is you can hire an independent tech agnostic third party to help you plan for your project, to help you negotiate with these software vendors so that you have a third party advisor that doesn't have any skin in the game and they have nothing to gain from you making a bad decision. But however you decide to tackle it, you want to make sure you start with realistic expectations, because when you have unrealistic expectations, it leads to a lot of bad decisions later on that can create a lot of challenges that are hard to recover from. Another common pattern we see with ERP software lawsuits is that organizations don't have a clear vision of what it is they want their future state to look like. They don't understand or have a good vision or a good articulation of what their operating model is going to be, how they want to structure the organization, how they want to improve their business. And oftentimes what they do is they hide behind this concept of just go find the technology and the technology will tell you how to run your business. And that's just simply not true, and it's not realistic. So much of today's software is so flexible that you have lots of different options in terms of how you can deploy even the simplest business process. So you have to have a pretty good vision of what it is you want out of the software. What are the showstoppers? What are the things you can live with or without? And that lack of clarity, if you don't have that, leads to a lot of problems later on, because now you're shooting in the dark, you're spinning your wheels, you expect a project team to guess and figure out what they think the organization should look like in the future. And oftentimes, more often than not, that's going to be misaligned with the reality of what executives want. So you want to make sure that you take the time up front before you even start implementing software. You want to make sure that you take the time to define what your future state's going to look like, both in terms of the operating model, the way the business processes are going to work, the way you're going to be organized, and ultimately the way you're going to use technology to improve your business. And what this does when you invest that time up front is that it allows you to spend a little bit more time to make sure you've got a clear roadmap and a clear blueprint so that you can actually speed up the project overall. And what we found is the companies that rush past that phase of implementation planning and future state clarity, when they rush through that or gloss over it altogether, they end up failing along the way. And most, if not all, of the expert witness engagements that I've been involved with and that my teams have been involved with demonstrated this same pattern. If there's one thing I could pick out that has been a consistent pattern in every single ERP software expert witness engagement that my team and I have been involved with, it's the fact that the projects didn't focus enough time and energy on organizational change. In other words, they didn't focus on the human component of change, and they spent too much time and money on the technology pieces of the transformation. And the reason this is so important and so telling is because oftentimes it's not the software that fails in these lawsuits. When we go through these lawsuits or are testifying on behalf of these lawsuits, there's a lot of fighting between the opposing parties that typically will say on one side that the software doesn't work. The client was sold a bill of goods, the software didn't do what was advertised, that sort of thing. On the other side, the implementing organization or the client, the end client, will often say, you lied to us, software vendor, you didn't tell us what your software could and couldn't do, or you didn't have a realistic plan to begin with, or you didn't give us the best resources to help us through the project. And one of the things that often comes out of it is that organizations will fight over whose responsibility it is to do the organizational change management piece. Typically, software vendors will do some limited end user training, but then they rely on you, the implementing organization, to do the train the trainer approach, to where you actually go train your employees en masse. And that's okay, that's a way to start, but there's a lot more to change management than just end user training, and that's where a lot of organizations struggle. And in every single lawsuit that we've testified on behalf of, we've seen the same phenomena where there just wasn't enough effort on organizational change management. Now, whose fault it is, whose responsibility it is, really depends on how you structured your contracts. But you want to make sure that you look past the typical end user training and the basic communication type stuff that software vendors and system integrators or implementers will do, and really look to how can we manage change better than organizations that have been through a lawsuit like the ones we're talking about here today. The fourth big challenge we see in ERP software lawsuits is poor program management and controls. In other words, there isn't anyone on the team that's objectively, agnostically, and effectively managing the entire program. And note that I use the word program management, not project management, because most software vendors do provide project managers that will manage that one work stream within an overall project. But typically what they don't do is they don't manage the overall program, the multiple work streams, things like data migration, organizational change, the process improvement, the integration, the architecture between different systems, the decommissioning of legacy systems. There's a lot of moving parts in an overall project, and typically your software vendor involved in your ERP implementation is just handling one myopic work stream within that overall program. Now, if you'd like to learn more on this, I actually have a whiteboard video where I dive into what exactly program management is versus project management. I think that'll help you unpack and uncover what I'm talking about here in a little bit more detail. You can watch the video right here on my YouTube channel. I describe that in a lot more detail. But the point here is that you want to make sure you have the right program management and the right controls in place, and that you're not just simply outsourcing the program management function to your software vendor or to your implementation partner. Because again, typically they're only focused on one work stream, and quite frankly, they're typically not that good at project management or program management. So it's incumbent on you, the end client, to make sure that you shore up that lack of competency and build some sort of program management and ERP expertise in-house that can help you manage the project better. And that's something that we help our clients with every day, is helping them build out that PMO, help them manage the program management of the overall project to ensure that they're successful. Now, the fifth common pattern we see in ERP software lawsuits is not so much that the software itself doesn't work, but that the software is not aligned with the business processes and vice versa. So in other words, there's a disconnect between the way the operations can or should work and the way the software works. And that doesn't get reconciled in time. You go live with the system, and no matter what, you're going to fail if you have that severe misalignment between business and technology. Now, there's a couple of different ways you can handle this. I mean, one is to change the software to fit your business and say that we are going to customize, we're going to modify, we're going to do whatever we need to do to change the software to fit our business. Or we can say we're going to change the business to fit the software and the way the software works out of the box. Now, obviously, this is a age-old debate that never really gets resolved, and it's a lot easier said than done to pick one side or the other. But the reality is most organizations end up with a sort of hybrid. They have some business processes that they know are competitive advantages, and they're going to force the software to fit the business. There's going to be other parts of their business where it's not a source of competitive advantage. There's no reason for them to be different, and they're going to fit the business into the software rather than the other way around. But the key here is that organizations that don't have a clear vision and clear understanding of what it is they're trying to accomplish and how they're going to reconcile the difference between business and technology is something that software failures and lawsuits struggle with, even more so than most organizations. Now, to add one more layer to this, oftentimes you're going to run into this problem even if you've picked the perfect software for your organization, or at least as close to perfect as you can get. Some organizations just pick completely the wrong technology, and it's just not a good fit. But I will say that that's usually not the case. Usually the software fit is at least okay, and that's usually not the biggest source of the problem. The bigger problem was that there wasn't that reconciliation that needed to happen between business and technology. So no matter how severe the situation is or not, you can expect that there is going to be misalignment between business and technology. The key is, how do you reconcile that in your project? So these are the 5 big takeaways and lessons that I have from having helped over 50 different organizations through their software lawsuits as an expert witness. And if you'd like to brainstorm more with our expert witness team or myself, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to brainstorm how we can support your project. Even if you're not in the lawsuit phase, if you're in the midst of an implementation that perhaps is getting off rail or getting off track, we're happy to brainstorm ideas on how you can get it back on track so you don't end up in a lawsuit phase. And certainly if you are in a lawsuit right now, we'd love to chat with you about how we can support you in your legal efforts as an expert witness. You can reach out to me. I've included my contact information below. Please feel free to reach out to me directly. So if you found this information useful, and hope you have a great day. ERP software lawsuits are full of... So you want to make sure that you... I lost my train of thought. Parties involved in the project up front had real... Let me start that over. That was awkward. That just came out wrong out of the gate. So this has provided you with some guidance, or we can say we're going to change the software. No, the opposite of that.